This is my emulating Emily project. Sorry, I'm sick. Okay, the poem I chose is No Rat Can Torture Me by Emily Dickinson. No rat can torture me, my soul's at liberty. Behind this mortal bone there knits a bolder one. You cannot prick with saw, nor rend with scimitar. Two bodies therefore be, bind one, and one will flee. The eagle of his nest no easier divest, and gain the sky, than mayest thou. Except thyself may be thine enemy, captivity is consciousness, so's liberty. In the first stanza, the main word is liberty. The connotation is freedom, and the supporting keywords are no rat can torture me, knits, and boulder. No rat can torture me represents a faith that there is no one who can border the individual's freedom. Knits represents the right of freedom that an individual has in his or herself. Boulder represents a sense of courage which produced by the faith to the right of freedom creates. So I interpreted that the individual has a faith if he or she has the right to freedom in his or herself, and there's no one who can border its freedom except for themselves. Also, if the individual believes this right of freedom will give his or herself a sense of courage, it will be able to survive in this world. The person will be able to. In the second stanza, the keyword is cannot. The connotation is there's no ability. The supporting keywords are prick with saw, rend with scimitar, and bind and flee. Prick with saw and rend with scimitar represent a disturbance which could threaten the existence of an individual's freedom. Bind represents the individual's feeling towards that disturbance. Flee represents the individual's action toward that disturbance. So I interpreted that there was some disturbance which could threaten the existence of the individual's freedom, and the individual felt that if that threat was an effort to border his or her freedom, or he did think that, but because the individual believes that everyone, they possess the ability to they only possess the ability to border their own freedom. So, with a sense of courage from the power of freedom, the individual succeeded to fight and escape the threat. In the third stanza, the main keyword is easier. Connotation is simple. The supporting keywords are divest and gain the sky. Divest represents some burdens or problems in the past and present which will be thrown away or solved by the individual. The phrase gain the sky represents something like a goal of life which will be reached by the individual. I interpreted it to be that with their own freedom, it would be simple for the individual to solve all the problems or throw away all their burdens and reach the goal of life if the individual always trusts the power of freedom in himself. If the person has the ability to trust the power of his or her self-freedom, then they can explore their ability and creativity to achieve or reach their goal of life and solve or throw away their problems or burdens, and vice versa. So it depends on the individual's self to choose whether or not they will accept freedom and what they can do with it or not. The fourth stanza, the main word is consciousness. The connotation is awareness. Supporting keywords are thyself and thine enemy. Thyself represents the persona's self, the one instead of God, who can determine its destiny. Thine enemy represents the persona's self, but is the real obstacle in the way to use and defend its freedom. I interpreted that the individual who insisted has awareness that the real suspect who very potentially borders his or her freedom is his or her own self. The individual itself is the only one, instead of God, who can determine his or her destiny, to use and defend the freedom or ignore the freedom. This poem, it represents and discusses that every creature has the right of freedom, and the only thing who can make the freedom exist or not exist is ourselves. So it's talking about self-freedom, emancipation. The poem that I wrote is called Land of Misfortune. No rack can torture me, save the great Bering Sea. Its twists and turns mold my newfound urn. The streams of orating and surges of outbreak breach my great big facade. Craft should crash, break me, nod. The kind and gentle fish are carried away, swish, as shot fish killed. There's no way out. The shade tree loses plea without iced tea. Society's firmly poisoned, and I lay dead. My first stanza, I have a lot of symbolism. So, the Great Bering Sea represents society. Sorry. The twists and turns represents our society effects on an individual. And I wrote, just heads up, I wrote this poem thinking about how Emily would feel in her world and in her society. So the urn represents an individual at the end of their life, because you put ashes into an urn. So the ashes in the urn contrast with fire and water. So together, the sea and the urn symbolize the relative insignificance of a person. In the second stanza, orating an outbreak represents society's words. Streams and surges continue the water theme, and it means, as strong as an individual may be, the relentless quote-unquote water of society breaks down an individual. The kind and gentle fish personify friends and colleagues of Emily who are also deeply affected by society. Society kills the fish too, and when I say kill, I mean they kill like the real true person inside of them, and they become this fake person to try and conform to society, and Emily is not interested in that, so she pushes them away as friends. And overall, I mean that it is even the strongest individuals around the individual, or Emily, cannot withstand society. My last stanza, the shade tree represents Emily, who has no place without conforming to Southern society, which is the iced tea part. And the last two lines, I imagine that Emily summarizes that society is sick and she cannot survive in it, which is referring back to the urn in the first stanza. The title, Land of Misfortune, contrasts water with land, and also this like society brings upon misfortune to the land like of Earth. So it's like this world of misfortune caused by society. The contrasts are individual versus society, and fire, which are the ashes, and water, and also the kind and gentle fish versus being killed. That is my Emulating Emily project. Thank you.